Hello everyone and welcome to today's video where I will be discussing and explaining what was the Enlightenment, specifically the French one. I will be going over famous philosophers, critical ideas, and how it affects us today. Let's dive in. The Enlightenment was an intellectual movement in the 17th and 18th century that challenged traditional authority, emphasizing reason and individual rights and the pursuit of knowledge. In France, the movement had especially radical impact as it directly questioned the legitimacy of the monarchy, the church, and the rigid social hierarchy. For centuries, France operated within the Ancien Régime, where power was concentrated in the monarchy and the Catholic Church. Dissent was repressed, and questioning authority could lead to imprisonment or exile. However, during the Enlightenment, French philosophers, Voltaire, Rousseau, Montesquieu, Diderot, among others, began to challenge these structures, paving the way for revolutionary change. Well, it really boils down to four basic ideas. One, the nature of government and power, essentially asking questions like should rulers have absolute authority and should power be divided among different branches? Is monarchy a legitimate form of government or should the people govern themselves? What is the role of laws in protecting individual freedom? Two, individual rights versus state control. Should individuals have freedom of speech, religion, press? Can a government restrict freedoms for the sake of stability, or is freedom more important than order? How do you balance personal liberty with the need of a functioning society? 3. The role of religion in society. Should religion be separate from government? Is religious authority necessary for morality, or can reason guide ethics? How do we prevent religious persecution while maintaining religious freedom? Then there's 4, the importance of education and knowledge. Who should have access to knowledge? The elite or everyone? Is education the key to progress and human development? Should scientific discoveries be limited by religious or political authorities? These are all major questions that revolve around and are very common during the time of the Enlightenment. You should now like and subscribe because I'm going to keep going. Anywho, back to the video. So we have Voltaire, who lived from 1694 to 1778, a big advocate of free speech and religious tolerance. Voltaire was one of the most influential Enlightenment thinkers, known for his sharp wit and relentless criticism of censorship, religious dogma, and absolute monarchy. He argued that no institution, whether the church or the state, should have unchecked power. He advocated for freedom of speech and expression, believing that open discussion was necessary for a just society. He fiercely opposed religious intolerance and criticized the Catholic Church's control over knowledge and morality. His famous quote, often paraphrased as, "I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it," reflects his commitment to free expression. Voltaire was frequently exiled and imprisoned for his views, but his writings helped spread Enlightenment ideas across Europe in general. So, Jean-Jacques Rousseau. He was born in 1712, died in 1778, and he came up with the social contract and popular sovereignty. So Rousseau took the Enlightenment ideas even further than Voltaire, arguing that governments derive their power from the people, not from divine right or aristocracy. In his book, The Social Contract, in 1762, he introduces the concept of political legitimacy, which comes from a collective agreement between rulers and the ruled. His famous statement, "Man is born free, but everywhere else he is in chains," criticized social hierarchies and argued that individuals should have a say in their government. He rejected the idea that kings had a natural right to rule, instead proposing popular sovereignty, where governments exist to serve the will of the people. His ideas heavily influenced the French Revolution, which happened from 1789 to 1799, as revolutionaries cited the social contract to justify overthrowing the monarchy. Rousseau emphasizes on democracy and equality, made him one of the most revolutionary thinkers of the Enlightenment. Rousseau's emphasis on democracy and equality made him one of the most revolutionary thinkers of the Enlightenment. Montesquieu from 1689 to 1755, revolving around the separation of powers. Unlike Rousseau, who wanted a direct democracy, Montesquieu believed in a balanced government that prevented tyranny through a separation of powers. In The Spirit of the Laws, 1748, he analyzed different political systems and concluded that power should be divided into three branches: the legislative, executive, and judicial branches. Sound familiar? Like the US system? Just a little? Montesquieu's work challenged the idea of absolute monarchy and absolute power, arguing that no single person should have hold of all the political power. Denis Diderot. Diderot was not just a philosopher, but also a radical publisher. He led the creation of the Encyclopedia, a massive collection of human knowledge designed to challenge ignorance and spread Enlightenment ideals. His encyclopedia included contributions from major Enlightenment thinkers and covered topics ranging from science and philosophy to government and human rights. This work was heavily censored by the French monarchy and the Catholic Church, as it promoted secular knowledge and criticism of religious authority. He famously wrote, "Man will never be free until the last king is strangled with the entrails of the last." This statement reflected his belief that monarchy and religious institutions were obstacles to true intellectual and political freedom. Diderot's encyclopedia was banned multiple times, but it circulated widely, spreading Enlightenment ideas across France and Europe. His work reinforced the notion that knowledge should be accessible to everyone, not just the elite. This statement reflected his belief that monarchy and religious institutions were obstacles to true intellectual and political freedom. The impact of the Enlightenment on France and beyond. The Enlightenment was not just a period of intellectual debate. It led to real-world revolutions and massive societal changes. 3 examples. 1. The French Revolution. The Enlightenment directly fueled the French Revolution, which overthrew the monarchy and established the First French Republic. The Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen in 1789 was heavily inspired by Enlightenment ideals proclaiming freedom, equality, and the end of aristocratic privilege. The monarchy and church lost much of their power, and new political structures were built around Enlightenment principles. A second example would come with the American Revolution, 1775 to 1783. The U.S. founding fathers, including Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, were deeply influenced by Montesquieu's separation of power, Rousseau's ideas on democracy, and Voltaire's beliefs in freedom of speech. This would later influence the U.S. Constitution and Bill of Rights, which reflect Enlightenment principles, particularly in the emphasis of individual liberties. 3 is the spread of democratic movements. Enlightenment ideas continue to inspire revolutions in Latin America, Europe, and beyond in Asia. Throughout the 19th century, many modern governments, including constitutional democracies, were shaped by the ideas of the French Enlightenment. Now, the overall legacy of the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment fundamentally reshaped the way people think about government power and human rights. It challenged century-old traditions and laid the groundwork for the modern world. However, its ideas were not without consequences. The French Revolution led to political instability, violence, and eventually Napoleon's rise to power. Some Enlightenment ideals, such as universal equality, were slow to be realized, particularly for women and enslaved peoples. The tensions between individual freedom and state control remain a central political debate to this day, and that's just 3 examples. Despite these challenges, though, the Enlightenment is still one of the most influential intellectual movements in history. It gave rise to the world we live in today, one where democracy, free speech, and human rights are seen as fundamental, even when they are still being fought for now. The French Enlightenment was not just a collection of abstract ideas, it was a revolution in thought that shaped modern democracy, human rights, and the way we view power. It's thinkers like Voltaire, Rousseau, Montesquieu, Diderot, and many others that challenged authority, reshaped political philosophy, and proved that ideas can change the world. While the fight for freedom, equality, and knowledge continues, the foundations laid by the French Enlightenment remain as relevant today as they were centuries ago when they were first brought on the table. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it and you found something interesting about the French Enlightenment and where we are today because of that. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'm glad you enjoyed the video. Click the subscribe button, please. Anywho, have a good night, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.